Good morning. So today we're going to be looking at the legacy of World War II. So there's definitely a couple of videos that I want you guys to check out that kind of go over the human cost of this war. But today's lecture is going to be considerably shorter, which you guys should be happy about. So first and foremost, the vocab. The program passed in 1948 to help financially boost the economies of Western Europe that cost about $13 billion is known as the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan. Then passed in 1944, this bill provided educational and economic help to U.S. World War II veterans. It is still in existence today. That is the GI Bill. The GI Bill. Court proceedings held in Germany after World War II, where Nazi leaders were tried for war crimes. We've already talked about these. That is the Nuremberg Trials. N-U-R-E-M-B-E-R-G. Nuremberg Trials. The International Peacekeeping Organization, to which most of the world's nations belong, which was founded in 1945, basically to replace the League of Nations, is known as the United Nations. The United Nations, or UN. Okay, so the war's human cost. So no war, even World War I, came even close to the cost in lives and destruction as World War II did. So it's kind of why there's this distinction between moving from calling World War I the Great War, or the war to end all wars, to World War I, because World War II was considerably worse. The human cost on both sides, Axis and Allies, was astronomical. So the Soviet Union lost the most soldiers. So total number of soldiers killed was 7.5 million. 7.5 million soldiers. But when you compare that with the number of Soviet civilians that died, it is 20 million. So 20 million civilians in the Soviet Union were killed. As far as the U.S., we lost 400,000 soldiers. 400,000 soldiers. And had another 600,000 soldiers that were wounded. Right? So total casualties are going to be 1 million. Okay, total casualties are 1 million. The world in general. Right? So the entire world, 20 million soldiers were killed. 20 million soldiers were killed. And 40 million civilians were killed. 40 million. Now, I have posted a video in our files section that I definitely want you guys to take a second to look at. That is, I'll try to find the actual name of it real quick. But it goes over all of the numbers and gives you a graphic for what these numbers look like. So, here we are. So it is called The Fallen, right? So The Fallen of World War II. Right now it's the top one in your files section. So definitely check that video out. And kind of see these numbers. Why were there so many civilian deaths? The main reason is because warfare had changed, right? To the point that no longer were armies only fighting armies. Armies were in cities, in urban areas, and civilians became casualties of these wars because of the proximity of civilians next to military targets. So, we've talked about a few different instances of civilians being killed. Excuse me, I feel like I have to sneeze again. The largest of that being the Holocaust, right? So remember, 6 million people, or 6 million Jews, are going to be killed in that action, with another about 3 million others that are undesirables to German society and prisoners of war. So very, very high numbers there. And then we also talked about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? So 90,000 in Hiroshima and 60,000 in Nagasaki that are killed within 90 seconds. So that in and of itself accounts for a pretty large number of that 40 million. But if we also think about the bombing raids that the Germans were conducting in England, right, as they were attempting that blitzkrieg with the Battle of Britain, we lose about 500,000 people. Okay? And then the course of Allied bombing over Germany that is nonstop from essentially 1942 to 1945, we see several million German civilians that are going to be killed in that. Furthermore, there's firebombing of American firebombing of Japanese cities, and we chose to use firebombing because most Japanese cities were made out of wood, so it burned blocks and blocks and blocks of wooden neighborhoods in Japan, which resulted in a couple million deaths there as well. Then there's the Second Sino-Japanese War and the occupation of China following that by Japan, where there's going to be mass executions and almost near genocide of the Chinese people in Manchuria. And we don't really have accurate numbers for what that death looks like. But China is going to lose millions of civilians in that act. So, because warfare changed, we see more civilian deaths. And that's not something that has stopped following World War II. It's only been minimized because we have better technology that allows us to more accurately target military targets instead of civilian targets. But many dictators have kind of purposefully surrounded their palace complexes, their military complexes, with civilians because they know that if they are targeted, that the powers that are trying to take them out are going to have to make that decision. Do we continue to attack this knowing that there will be civilian casualties? It's something that modern militaries have to take into account. Okay. So World War II also created an enormous amount of refugees. So orphans, so people whose parents died, freed prisoners of war, people who fled their homes from advancing armies, all count for these refugees. And the world was looking at roughly 21 million refugees, mostly in Europe and Asia. Right, so 21 million refugees, people that don't have homes, people that don't have support systems anymore, and have to find a place to fit in this world. So economic winners and losers. World War II left many of the world's economies in ruins, mostly European. Right, European campaigns is where we're going to be looking at. So if we think about Germany's invasions, right, into places like Poland, and the massive amount of people that are killed in Poland, that's going to be very detrimental there. If we think about France, which already was struggling with population because of World War I, that is going to be continue to be a problem after World War II because they still don't have a male population. I mean, they have a male population, greatly lessened male population. In Russia, we are going to see the total war that was kind of waged there is going to destroy farms, is going to destroy communities, and create a lot of problems. And then Germany itself is going to have massive rebuilding efforts that are going to happen because it has been bombed to smithereens. But there is some interesting things that occurred with Allied bombing of Germany. And the American generals that were kind of in charge of picking out targets and that kind of stuff wanted to preserve the architecture of Germany. So many buildings, specifically churches and museums, were spared or were supposed to be spared. Okay? So most churches in Germany are still standing. Some of them have definitely some damage from the bombing that is still very visible, but they have been saved and restored from that bombing. There's also a really cool story about a American air commander whose grandmother was from a little city called Rotenburg, and in order to preserve like his heritage from there, he spared Rotenburg of bombing. So for that reason, the city of Rotenburg is about the only city in Germany that still has medieval walls, which is pretty cool to see. if you're ever in southern Germany. All right, so the U.S., however, came out of World War II with a very strong economy. So when we're thinking about why the U.S. was able to come out, basically the two answers we're looking at is, first and foremost, we were not involved for as long. Okay, so we are only involved in the war for about 4 years. Okay, 1941 to 1945. Okay, so because of that, we don't have as many deaths. Right, so 400,000 people being killed, absolutely that is a tragic loss. But when you compare that to countries like the Soviet Union, which lost 7.5 million, with Germany that lost about 6 million, you're really not looking at major numbers for the United States as far as casualties. The second thing was that there were no battles fought in America except for Pearl Harbor. So Pearl Harbor is the only thing that is on American soil, and it's not really, it's a territory, and so it's not even a state yet. But because there are no battles that are fought on U.S. soil, the American infrastructure is not interrupted. Right? So our production facilities, our railways, our population centers are not going to be bombed. There is one other brief skirmish that takes place between the United States and Japan that takes place in the Aleutian Islands off of Alaska. So that is another very small instance of fighting happening on our continent, but still not in the United States technically, because Alaska was also still a territory at this time. So no battles fought in America that destroyed our infrastructure is the other reason that we are able to come out of this war with a very strong economy. The U.S. then sent out to help out the shattered economies of Europe and Japan. So the U.S. occupied Japan for several years after World War II and put it on a path to economic recovery. General Douglas MacArthur is going to be put in charge of kind of managing Japan in the post-war era. So for about 10 years, it's going to be essentially martial law in Japan, where the United States is kind of running things. But in doing this, they really set up Japan for future success. To the point that Japan starts industrializing again very, very quickly, and becomes modern industry very, very quickly. So they go from being an industrial society to a post-industrial society very, very quickly, which is awesome for Japan's economy. And Japan becomes a very, very close ally to the United States. And so that is still an alliance that is very, very strong to this day. Bases in Japan were very, very important to both the Korean War and the Vietnam War, as sort of staging grounds for those operations. So very important that we developed that relationship with Japan in the post-war era. In 1948, Congress approved the Marshall Plan to help rebuild the economies of Western Europe, which was essentially a Cold War move. Right? So after the Yalta Conference, if you guys remember talking about the Yalta Conference, we divided up Europe between the Communist bloc, or the Russian bloc, and the NATO alliances. Right, so the allied countries of England, France, and the United States were going to be in charge of half of Germany and half of Berlin, and kind of overseeing half of Europe in general. Whereas the communist societies of the United Soviet Socialist Republic were going to be in charge of the other half. And with the Communist Party not really caring about rebuilding as much, they were trying to implement change politically. Instead of sort of economic stimulus, this $13 billion move to rebuild the economies of Western Europe made people in Europe want to be under the control of NATO countries instead of the Communist bloc, or what's going to become known as the Warsaw Pact. And you can still see this today. So if you go to Berlin, Berlin is a city that was divided, and we're going to talk more in detail about how Berlin was divided in a couple of weeks. You can actively see where the Soviet zone was and where the American and British and French zones were, because the lighting is different, right? So much of East Berlin, which was the Soviet side, is still using older lights that kind of burn with a yellow sort of color. And there's not a lot of production. There's not a lot of like a dense financial district with skyscrapers and that kind of stuff, because there was no investment in that kind of stuff. Whereas in West Berlin, which was controlled by the Allies, you see brighter white lights. You see massive financial structures and skyscrapers that have been built up. And all of this happens partially because of the Marshall Plan, right? Because we were funneling money in to show that democracy is better than communism, okay? Because democracy and capitalism allows for this sort of production to happen, whereas communism does not. So the Marshall Plan is definitely an opening move in the Cold War. So some changes in American society. Soldiers returning home needed jobs and education, so Congress passed the GI Bill of 1946. The GI Bill of 1946. So even to this day, if I'm sure since we are in Colorado Springs, many of you are familiar with military families and military life. So once you have kind of served your time in the armed forces, you get this thing called the GI Bill, which allows you, once you have finished your military tour of duty, you get to go to college for free, right, because of this GI Bill. So it provides money to you to help you get an education or to get training for a job that allows you to move forward with that. Sorry, I just noticed that Haley changed my picture up here, so it's no longer the David, it's Kyber, because it's Kyber's 3-month anniversary since we adopted him, which is super exciting. So, soldiers returning home found a labor shortage, and the Truman administration is going to do a lot to try to fix this, but it creates some conflict. Excuse me. Because remember, right before World War II, we were in a Great Depression. So there was no jobs for people. And the war created those jobs. But now that the war is over, those jobs are no longer available. So soldiers returning home found that America had changed, especially when dealing with race issues. So many of the jobs that they thought they were going to have were now being filled by women that wanted to continue working, or by black men and women or Mexican Americans that had stayed home. And there's a lot of race riots that are going to happen because of this. So it creates a lot of problems when these soldiers return home. Okay. So the back here, I'm going to have you guys do the back. So I will upload pictures of the textbook to allow you guys to talk about the United Nations, what is its purpose, and also the international tensions of the Cold War. We are going to go into more depth in the Cold War. That'll be the last sort of thing that we cover, are some of these proxy wars that are happening because of the Cold War. So we won't get too in depth in that today, and we already covered the Nuremberg trials when we talked about the Holocaust. So I'll upload those so you'll have access to those files, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll talk to you.